There is a plant with thick red stems crawling through the cracks in your driveway right now that contains more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon. Not per pound, per leaf. It has fed human beings for 4,000 years. It outlived the Roman Empire, and in 2022 a team of scientists at Yale discovered it does something that every biology textbook said was impossible. The herbicide industry spends billions of dollars every year making sure you never learn its name. It vanished from American kitchens not because it failed, but because it succeeded too completely to be sold. You cannot patent it. You cannot trademark it. You cannot make a farmer buy its seed again every spring, because it reseeds itself by the hundreds of thousands and grows in the worst soil you own, asking for nothing. A food that cannot be owned is a food that in our world gets erased. This is that food, and it is growing between your patio stones this very afternoon. This is Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, and the story of how the most nutritious leafy plant ever measured became the most hated weed in America is the story of everything wrong with how we decide what counts as medicine. Welcome to Lost Plant Remedies. Let us start where the record starts. In 1050 BC, someone in northern Greece sealed a handful of tiny black seeds in a clay vessel. When archaeologists opened that vessel 3,000 years later, they found purslane seeds, identical to the plant growing wild between the stones outside the dig. By the 7th century BC, the seeds appear in the offerings at the Samian Heraion, one of the most sacred sanctuaries in ancient Greece. By the 4th century BC, the Greek botanist Theophrastus was writing cultivation instructions, telling farmers to sow it in April alongside their essential crops. This was not a weed, this was a staple. The Roman Empire cultivated it across 3 continents. The physician Galen prescribed it. And in 1288, when a writer named Bonvicin de la Riva catalogued everything the city of Milan ate, purslane was on the list, not as a curiosity, but as ordinary daily food. And here is the part that should stop you. While Europeans were eating it every day, the same plant was already growing on the other side of an ocean that no European had yet crossed. When settlers documented purslane in Massachusetts in 1672 and assumed they had brought it with them, they were wrong. Archaeologists later found purslane seeds in Ontario dating to 1350 AD and in Kentucky dating to 800 BC. The native peoples of this continent had been cultivating it for at least 2,500 years, alongside sunflowers and squash, in what scholars call the Eastern Agricultural Complex. 2 civilizations, separated by an entire ocean, neither knowing the other existed, both looked at this small, succulent plant and independently decided it was essential food. When that happens, it is worth asking what they both knew that we have forgotten. What they knew, it turns out, was hiding in the chemistry, and the way modern science stumbled onto it is a detective story. In 1960, an American physiologist named Ansel Keys launched what became the 7 Countries Study, the most ambitious nutrition study ever attempted, tracking the diets and the hearts of 12,563 men across 7 nations for the next 50 years. One result broke every assumption of the era. The farmers of Crete ate an enormous amount of fat, more than 35% of their calories, and by every theory of the time they should have been dropping dead of heart attacks. Instead, they had the lowest rate of heart disease Keys had ever recorded anywhere on Earth. Lower than Japan, lower than Finland. For 20 years, scientists credited the olive oil. Then, in the 1980s, a new team went back to the original frozen blood samples, and they were not looking for cholesterol this time. They were looking for omega-3 fatty acids. The Cretans had 3 times the omega-3 levels of the Dutch, but they were not eating 3 times the fish. They were eating purslane every single day, in their salads, in their stews, sautéed in olive oil, and fed to the chickens and goats whose meat and eggs they then ate. The entire island's food chain ran on a weed that grew wild in every field. In 1992, a researcher named Dr. Artemis Simopoulos put purslane under proper analysis, and the numbers looked like a mistake. 300 to 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams of fresh leaves. 5 to 7 times more than spinach, 15 times more than iceberg lettuce. It was, and remains, the richest leafy green source of omega-3 ever measured. But the truly strange finding was this. Land plants are not supposed to make EPA, the marine omega-3 you're told you can only get from fish and algae. Purslane makes it. Only traces, but it makes it. And when Simopoulos published, other scientists assumed her samples had been contaminated. They had not. Then came the test that mattered. The Lion Diet Heart Study took 605 patients who had already survived one heart attack and split them in two. Half got the standard low-fat cardiac diet doctors still hand out. Half got a Mediterranean diet rich in purslane and omega-3s. After 5 years, the purslane group had 70% fewer deaths. Not 70% fewer heart attacks, 70% fewer deaths from all causes. The study was halted early, because once you have that result, keeping the other group on the inferior diet is no longer ethical. So why is a plant like that not in every grocery store in America? 2 reasons, and together they tell you everything. The first is shelf life. Purslane is a succulent. Cut it, and it wilts to mush within a day or two. Far too fast to survive the week-long journey through a modern industrial supply chain of warehouses and trucks and grocery coolers. Every trait that makes it a perfect food for a person who grows it in their own yard makes it commercially impossible for a system built on long-distance shipping. It could never be a supermarket product, so the supermarket system simply pretended it did not exist. The second reason is darker, and it is the reason the plant was not merely ignored, but actively attacked. The global herbicide market hit $40 billion in 2024. Bayer, Syngenta, and Corteva sell products formulated specifically to kill purslane in lawns and fields, including 2,4-D, a chemical first developed as a weapon in the Second World War, and then marketed to American homeowners by the Scots Company in 1947 as the path to a perfect lawn. Agricultural extension offices publish purslane eradication guides. Homeowners associations forbid it. And the reason is not that purslane harms anything. The reason is that you cannot control it and you cannot own it. You cannot patent purslane. You cannot engineer its seed to be sterile, so farmers must rebuy it. You cannot make a proprietary hybrid. It has reproduced freely for 4,000 years, and it will keep reproducing no matter what any corporation does. A single plant makes up to 200,000 seeds, and those seeds stay alive in the soil for up to 40 years. Every fragment of stem that touches the ground roots into a new plant. One university study on killing it with superheated plastic concluded that if purslane dies, it only means absolutely everything that could possibly go right went right. It is, in the most literal sense, the plant that cannot be killed and cannot be sold, and in our economy those are the 2 unforgivable sins. That Yale discovery from the opening, the impossible one, is the final proof of what we're throwing away. In 2022, Dr. Erica Edwards and her team published in the journal Science Advances that purslane runs 2 completely different photosynthesis systems, called C4 and CAM, inside the very same cells at the same time, one for explosive growth and one for surviving drought. No other plant on Earth does this. Edwards called it a kind of super plant. It survives on 1/5 of the water corn needs. It thrives in soil too salty to grow anything else. As the climate dries out the farmland we depend on, this is precisely the plant that does not merely survive those conditions but accelerates in them. The crop that could feed people through what is coming is already here, growing for free, and we spray it. The rest of the world never made our mistake. In India they still eat it and call it kulfa. In Greece, glistrida. In the village salads that the 7-country study was secretly measuring. In Mexico it is verdolagas, stewed with pork and chili. In China it has been cultivated continuously for thousands of years as machisan. Across Turkey and Iran and the Middle East it fills the summer table. Half the world never forgot what purslane is. The other half, our half, was taught to poison it. So let me show you how to take it back starting this week. Learn to identify it with total confidence. Because it is easy, and there is only one rule that matters. Purslane grows low and flat, sprawling in a mat, with smooth reddish-purple stems that are thick and juicy like the succulent it is, and small fat paddle-shaped leaves with tiny yellow flowers tucked in where the leaves meet. Snap a stem and it is juicy, and the sap runs clear. The one look-alike is a weed called spurge, which sprawls in the same spots, but spurge has thin stems, flat leaves, and bleeds a milky white sap the instant you break it. Clear juicy stem means purslane, means food. Milky white sap means spurge, means leave it. Check for that milky sap a few times and you'll never confuse them again. Then stop poisoning it and start eating it. Harvest the tender stem tips and leaves young in the first 6 weeks. Eat it raw in a salad where it has a crisp, lemony, faintly salty bite, dressed the Greek way with olive oil, lemon and garlic. Blend a handful into a smoothie where you will never taste it. Sauté it like spinach, fold it into scrambled eggs, or stew it into a pot of beans the way they do in Mexico. Cooking lowers the omega-3 somewhat, so eat some of it raw for the full benefit. And above all, save the seeds. Let a few plants go to flower in late summer. Collect the hundreds of thousands of seeds, and you will never have to buy a green again, and neither will anyone you share them with. One honest caution: purslane contains oxalates, the same compounds in spinach and chard. For almost everyone this is a non-issue, no different from a spinach salad. But if you are prone to calcium oxalate kidney stones, eat it in moderation and cook it, which lowers the oxalate content. Gather only from ground you know has never been sprayed, which rules out the treated lawn and the roadside, and learn the milky sap spurge test before you pick. That is the whole of it. Think about what has actually been done to you. You have spent money, year after year, on fish oil capsules that go rancid in the bottle, while the richest plant source of omega-3 ever measured grew free in the cracks of your own driveway, and you were sold a chemical descended from a wartime weapon to destroy it. The herbicide industry does not want you to know the best source of omega-3 on earth is a weed. The supplement industry does not want you to know the $30 bottle is chasing what purslane does for nothing. The agricultural industry does not want you to know the drought-proof supercrop their scientists dream of engineering has been growing in the gutter the entire time. They will not tell you any of it, because there is no profit in a plant that feeds you for free and cannot be owned. But the plant does not need their permission, and neither do you. It is not just a weed. It is the idea that nourishment can grow free, that the best medicine is not always the kind that comes in a package with a price, and that this knowledge can pass from one pair of hands to the next without a single dollar changing hands. Every person who learns to recognize purslane is one more person who stops believing that food only comes from a store. If this opened something for you, subscribe to Lost Plant Remedies before this video disappears, because we cover the plants and the forgotten knowledge that a profit-driven world would much rather you never went looking for. And if you want me to walk you through harvesting, eating, and saving the seeds of purslane through the whole summer, along with 4 other forgotten remedies, grab my free 5-day course, The Lost Ferment, linked in the description below. It costs nothing. Half the world never stopped eating this plant. It is time you remembered how.